Okay, so today we are doing my seasonal wrap-up video and I'm really excited for it. Please forgive my voice, I am a little bit under the weather, but that doesn't make me any less excited about this video because this is the first time that I get to do a wrap-up of everything I've read for a season. Really, really awesome. Now, let's talk about this as realistically as possible. I have not been reading for 12 weeks straight. I started off this channel at the same time as I started, my goal setting and all that kind of stuff and start off reading. And so I did not read in December. I did not read for the first 2 weeks of January, and I did not read for most of the third week of January either. So I basically read for a total of 5.5 weeks. That being said, before we do get into discussing what I've read in the Australian summer, because I'm in Australia and it was summer over here where, please forgive my voice, where on the other side of the world it was winter. So I hope you guys were having an okay time with the snow while we were boiling over here. Yeah, let's get right into it. But before we do, just want to explain that there will be no weekly vlog this week and there'll be no monthly vlog this week either, because everything that would have come up in my weekly vlog or my monthly vlog is all going to come up here anyway. So let's get right into it. For those 5.5 weeks that I was reading in summer, I read 8 books. 8, which is pretty awesome considering that in January I read 1, which means in February I read 7 books. Pretty awesome for me, and I have a very tall order for March. You may have seen, I think I have something like 9 books on my TBR that I videoed, but I think I have more that's coming from my library, so it's going to be a very busy month for me. But anyway, of those 8 books, let's break them down into genres. I read 4 fantasy books, 1 contemporary book, 1 paranormal book, 1 biography, and 1 mystery. Age group wise, I read 6 young adult books, 2 adult books, and 0 middle grade books, which surprised me as well. The paranormal genre surprised me because I thought that book was a fantasy. More about that in just a moment. And the middle grade, no middle grade books and 6 young adult books surprised me because I did think some of them were middle grade, but they weren't. They were young adult. So there we go. I read 1 tome, so 1 book that is over 500 pages. I read 5 300 to 500 page books and 2 0 to 299 page books. In total, this season, I have read 2,676 pages, which is really awesome for me considering I haven't read for over 2 years. I've done extremely well. Let's look at my star ratings. So I have 1 1-star book, 3 2-star books, 2 3-star books, 1 4-star book, and 1 5-star book. So I'm going to go in order through all the books that I have read, going from the lowest rated book that I've read all the way through and up until the highest rated book that I've read. So let's not waste any more time. I'm going to pause the video, and when we come back, we'll come back with my only 1-star book for this entire season. Which book is it? Can you guess? Well, you're about to find out in just a moment. Okay, and we're back. The only 1-star book that I had for this entire season was actually, sadly, the most recent book that I read. And I know, you guys, leading up to it, I was like, oh my god, this is going to be amazing, and I'm not going to DNF this book. I did not DNF it, but I came close so many times. Disappointingly, it was The Magicians by Lev Grossman. Now, this is one of the 2 adult fantasy books that I read this season, and it was such a letdown. I'm going to try not to talk too much about each book, but I kind of feel I need to, especially because this is the first time I'm actually discussing this book on this channel. I was so disappointed that for the first time on this channel, I'm going to break tradition and I am not going to do a review on this book. Up until now, I have reviewed every single book that I've read, whether it was a 2-star, a 3-star, a 4-star, or a 5-star. I've reviewed every single one that I read this year, but I'm not reviewing this one because I was just so let down. If you have not seen the show, or read the book, the non-spoiler version, quick little synopsis of this book version anyway, is that this story, The Magicians, show and or film, I do apologize about the glare there, focuses on this main character whose name is Quentin, who is nicknamed by his friends Q, so you might hear me interchange with Quentin and Q throughout this review. And yeah, it basically revolves around him, and he somehow through happenstances upon a school for magic. He doesn't mean to, he just does. And the dean there, it's a college or a university, depending on where you come from, for magicians, and the dean there spots him and asks him, are you willing to take the test? This is a school for magic. And he says, well, why not? He ends up doing really well, he ends up getting accepted, and we basically follow him through school. Now, what's really interesting about this book that I did not expect is that there are 4 books within the story, and the first book basically focuses on him going through school. So that was pretty interesting, and then eventually he ends up leaving school, and he and his friends go on some adventures, and that's basically all I'm going to say on that front. What disappointed me so much more about this book than I think in any other situation is that I've seen the show that this book was written, and then the show that was made was based off of the original work, this book. And the show is just so much better. I have never said before that a show or a film is better than a book, but this one is the exception to the rule. I can see how the show has taken creative liberties, because there are things in this book that do not appear in the show, and there are things in the show that do not appear in this book, and I can understand why on both fronts. The things that they leave out of this book are pretty boring as far as I'm concerned, so I understand why they did leave that out, and the things they added were pretty awesome. There is a character name change in this book, which confused me, and I had to do a bit of research to find out who is this new character I've never heard of, and then found out, oh, you know this one in the show? Well, this one's called this in the book. Oh, really? Okay. And there were a lot of other things that I just did not like about this book at all. There is one thing I liked about the book, and that was the experience of reading an adult book that was so unapologetically adult. So there is swearing in this book, and the author doesn't really care at all that he's swearing. There are sexual references that are made throughout this book, and again, the author just does not care because it's an adult book. So I found that very refreshing. I have read another adult book this season, but this one goes, well, it doesn't go as far as you can go, but it gets to a certain point that you can only go with an adult book. You can't go there with a YA. So I did find that interesting, but otherwise it was a whole slump to get through, and I just really didn't enjoy it. So 1 star for Lev Grossman's The Magicians. I have 3 2-star books. My first one is Once by Morris Gleitzman. This is my only contemporary so far for this year, and basically this story centers around the protagonist, whose name is Felix. Felix is what they refer to in this book as a Jew. Normally I would say a Jewish person, but in the book they say Jew, and he is the protagonist, so I guess that's okay. He is a Jew. He's in an orphanage because something happened with his parents. They're not dead, but something happened with them, and so he's been taken to an orphanage, and he's in an orphanage in Warsaw in Poland, and anyway, it's during the whole Third Reich situation, so you can imagine what this is about. This book does center around the protagonist, who is quite young, and we see what is going on in war-torn Poland through the eyes of a child. And for me, that made it an emotional read. To give you an example that does not appear in the book, for example, let's say he walks past a forest and he hears some gunshots. In his mind, he thinks, oh, that's normal, because there's always fireworks that go off at night, even though we as an adult, or we as the reader, especially if you're an adult, you're aware that, well, they're not fireworks, they're gunshots going off in the forest because people are being killed, in the woods because people are being killed. So for me, that made it a very emotional read. I read this book this season because my friend's son is going to high school for his very first year this year, and this is on the syllabus, and I told him that I would help him out. 2 stars at the end of the day. It was an easy book to get through. It definitely served its purpose. It was an emotional read. I was definitely invested in the book, but it just wasn't good enough to be a 5-star book for me. Okay, my next 2-star book was the very first book that I read this year, which is The Replacement by Brenna Yovanov, and how far I've come since I've read this book. And I think had I been given the chance again, I probably would have re-rated this, considering the other experiences I've had with other books so far this year. So, forgive the noise. So this book centers around Mackie, whose name is Malcolm, but they call him Mackie. I had a bit of an issue with that when I read it, because I love the name Malcolm. But anyway, it centers around Mackie, and for the first 100 pages, all we really know about Mackie is that he is someone who is allergic to a lot of different things that people experience in everyday life. And that's really all we know. It is a fantasy book, but it just doesn't appear to be for the first 100 pages. So there is a ton of a slog to get through before you get to anything remotely fantastical. And that is a massive part of the reason why this book did receive 2 stars from me, because it just took forever and a day to get there. Once we do get there, though, it is a pretty decent ride. It's not the most epic thing that I've read, which again covers the fact that it's rated 2 stars, but it's pretty good if you can get through the slog of the first 100 pages. So yeah, but anyway, 2 stars for The Replacement by Brenna Yovanov. I'm not going to spend more time on this one. I have reviewed it, as I have all these books except for The Magicians, so if you'd like to check them out, check out my reviews playlist. The third and final book that I gave 2 stars for this season is The Dead Girls Detective Agency by Susie Cox. This book revolves around this main character whose name is Charlotte. Within the first 2 pages, so I don't consider this to be a spoiler, Charlotte dies, and she ends up going to this place called the Hotel Atessa or Atessa, and meeting some other ghosts there who inform her that she's not in heaven or in hell, she's in some kind of limbo, and the only way she's going to get out of limbo is if she solves the murder of who killed her and why they killed her. So we go on this, I'm not going to say epic adventure because it didn't feel epic, but we go on an adventure that takes forever and a day to get to, and that's just my opinion, but that's what it was, for her to finally solve her murder. One thing I did love about this book, however, is the fact that there is a magic system, and I say that loosely. It's more of a ghost rules, things that ghosts can do and things that ghosts can't do, but I'll loosely call it a magic system, and I loved that about this book. I wish there was a whole lot more of that stuff in there. Unfortunately, the main character didn't really seem too interested in a lot of the ghostly things that you can do, so that's fine, that is what it is. There is a romance in this book, and one thing that really got to me with pretty much all of the YA novels that I read this season is there's always a side plot romance that seems to deviate from the premise, and this book, just like with The Replacement, is absolutely no exception. Whereas The Magicians, being an adult book, it had a romance, but the romance was over incredibly quickly, and I really appreciated that because, you know, there was no distraction thanks to a romance. But this book, there definitely was one, and yeah, it was distracting from the premise, and that really annoyed me, and that was a big part of why this book did receive 2 stars. There is a character in this book that I absolutely love, and I'm trying to remember what his name is. Edison. I'm just quickly looking at the blurb. Edison, he is a dark brooding character, and I just absolutely loved him, whereas there are 3 other characters that assist Charlotte, aside from Edison, who assists in his way. The other 3 are very bright and chipper and chirpy and where he is dark and brooding. The contrast between those 3 characters and Edison are absolutely amazing, and I loved Edison's character for it. I didn't like a lot of the choices that the protagonist made, and I didn't appreciate the fact that there was not a whole lot of fantasy that went on in this book, but the magic systems, again, loosely stated, magic systems were absolutely amazing, and so that's why this book did not receive 1 star. Based mostly on the magic systems and Edison, this book received 2 stars. Alright, let's move on to my first out of 2 3-star books that I read this season. And so actually I'm now going to take a quick break and tell you what, according to Goodreads, not necessarily according to me, but according to Goodreads, what the star ratings do mean. Apparently 1 star, if you give a book 1 star, it means you did not like that book. If you give a book 2 stars, it means it was okay. If you give a book 3 stars, it means you liked it. If you gave a book 4 stars, it means that you really liked it. And if you gave a book 5 stars, it meant it was amazing. Well, I have my own way to kind of put this, but I do agree that 3 stars is I liked the book. And 2 stars, I agree with it being okay. 4 stars, really liked it, yes, but 5 stars is more for me. I was obsessed with this book, so if I wasn't obsessed with it, I did not give it 5 stars. So we're going from the did not like and it was okay to liked, really liked, and it was amazing. So we're going to all the higher books. One thing that's really interesting to note is that I read, as I said, 8 books this season, half of which, 4 of them, were either 2 stars or lower. Oh, sorry, bit of movement behind me with the curtains. Bless that situation. I did read a lot of fantasy and apparently some paranormal, so to be expected. Half of the books that I read this season were 2 stars or lower, so not necessarily a good reading experience with those 4 for whatever reason. And again, Magicians aside, with the rest of them, I did review them, so you can go ahead and check out my playlist for those ones. But the first book that I gave 3 stars to, which I did like, was Personal Demons by Lisa Desroches. Unlike The Replacement by Brenna Yovanov, which was the first book that I read, this was the second book that I read this season, this year basically, and unlike The Replacement, I would not go back and re-rate this because I still to this day think that 3 stars was absolutely the right rating it should have received. I make comparisons between The Replacement and the book that I gave 5 stars to and think, was I way too lenient giving it 2 stars? Maybe I should have given it 1 star or even 1.5. But this one, 3 stars, it does actually make a lot of sense to me, and I'll explain why. Long story short, spoiler free, this book revolves around the central character whose name is Franny Kavanagh. Franny is a human, and then we have an angel and a demon. And this book is all about the angel and the demon trying to tag the human's soul because the human is very special. You don't find out why until right towards the end, but she is incredibly special, and both sides, demon, angel, God, and the ruler of the demon, whose name is King Lucifer, want to tag her. This book is a dual perspective book. Now, what I mean by this is that we have 2 separate perspectives that we are seeing the plot through their eyes. We see this plot through the eyes of Franny Kavanagh, which is fine, not necessarily for me, but it's fine. And we also see it through the eyes of the demon, who is Luke. We do not, however, get the perspective of the angel, Gabe. If we had the perspective of the angel, Gabe, I think I would have bumped this book up to 4 stars, because I think it would have been a lot more well-rounded. Instead, we get the views of the human and the demon, but not the views of the angel, and I just felt that that wasn't so balanced. You know what I mean? Okay, just quickly pausing there to cough up a lung. We'll just keep right on moving. Okay. Yeah, so that's basically it. That's all I can tell you, aside from spoilers. But I did not love Franny's perspective at all. Franny being the human, I just found it to be really, really, really boring. But I loved this guy, Luke's perspective. I thought it was absolutely fascinating. It was great to get a demon's perspective on what's going on. And as I said, it was really heartbroken that we didn't get this guy. We didn't get the angel's perspective. It would have been great to see both of them try and balance each other out. Quite frankly, if I could have a word with Lisa Desroches, I would say, who cares about this one? Let's take out Franny's view and keep in Luke and Gabe and just those 2. You know, trying to tag her and, you know, have it from their perspective rather than the human and just one side of this polarity, if that makes sense. So in the end, 3 stars though, it was actually a good read. Yeah. Not good enough to receive 4 or 5 stars, but overall, in the end, mainly because of Luke, I did like this book. My second 3-star book for this season is Vampire Academy, the very first volume in the Vampire Academy series. I have to be very careful here because when I did my last wrap up, weekly vlog wrap up, I referred to this book as Vampire Academy Volume 1, the Vampire Diary series, and it's not. This is a completely different series. It is Vampire Academy Volume 1 in the Vampire Academy series. This is an amazing book. It was my only reread for this month. I, in fact, have read books 1, 2, and 3 out of 6, because apparently there's 6 in the series, of this wonderful series. But I read them so long ago that I did not remember most of what went on in this book prior to rereading it. It was a very pleasurable experience. There were some things that occurred along the way that I really did not appreciate, and that's why I did downgrade it to 3 stars, but it was still a very pleasurable experience nonetheless. So I didn't hate this book, I wasn't obsessed with this book, but I did quite like this book, you know. So what they say 3 stars is? Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, no, I did. I liked it. It was a good book, and I've already, if you've seen my March TBR, you will know that the second book in the series, Frostbite, should be, fingers crossed, the last book that I read for March in my March TBR. So let's get on to the final 2 books. One book received 4 stars and one book received 5 stars. So which were the creme de la crop, the creme de la creme? Which ones were they and why? Let's find out right now. My only 4-star book for this season was Helen, Kellers Teacher by Margaret Davidson. This is a biography. Oh, before we go into this, actually, just very quickly back to Vampire Academy. This is the paranormal book that I was talking about. So I thought that this was a fantasy, but it's not. Technically, this is a paranormal book. And the Dead Girls Detective Agency I thought was a fantasy too, because it's about ghosts, but apparently it's a mystery book. So I got that wrong too. So I thought I read mostly fantasy, and I didn't. I read fantasy, contemporary, paranormal, biography, and mystery. Anyway, this is the biography, Helen Keller's Teacher, 4 stars by Margaret Davidson. It is a biography about Helen Keller's teacher, this lady here, well, depicted there, Annie Sullivan, who we learn about her life from, you know, a very young age and things that are going along with her. And then about halfway through the book, she goes off and works with Helen Keller, and we have some amazing moments there. This book is a really good book for so many reasons. It is a really fast read. The writing is incredibly simple. I thought this was middle grade. It's not. It is young adult, and that's totally fine. I'm happy. I'll take the fact that it's a young adult book. The first half of the book sees Annie Sullivan go through some really tough times, and I found that to be a little bit emotional. But then when we get into the second half of the book and Annie Sullivan meets Helen Keller, a girl who is deaf, blind, and mute, and she's able to teach her, the way she teaches her and just everything that they go through together, such an emotional pull at the heartstrings, that second half of the book, that it definitely deserved 4 stars, absolutely. The only reason this book did not receive 5 stars was because, unlike my only 5-star book for this season, whenever I put this book down, I wasn't necessarily motivated right away to go back and read it. In saying that, whenever I was reading it, I was attached to it. I just wasn't attached to it when I put it down, but I was with my 5-star book. So there is Helen Keller's Teacher by Margaret Davidson. Again, if you'd like to see this, you can go over to my playlist and check out the review on that over there. But when we come back, we're going to be talking about the one book that received 5 stars this season. You probably know which one it is. Do you? Don't you? Well, you'll find out in just a moment. Okay, so you've seen 7 of the 8 books that I've read this month, and half of them received 1 or 2 stars. Then there were a couple of 3s, there was a really good 4. Yeah. None of those books took over the series that I love the most. And the series that I love the most out of any book or book series that I've ever read were the Harry Potter series. I have a very deep connection to that series, and it has done a lot for me. It's done a lot for a lot of people, and I just have so much love for J.K. Rowling. I never, ever, ever thought a book could take over and be, in my view, better than Harry Potter. I thought J.K. Rowling has struck lightning in a bottle. This is one in a million kind of situation, and I will never find anything better than this. So I just really need to appreciate the series, because everything else, it's going to be even just a little bit subpar to Harry Potter. Not this book. This book revolutionized reading for me. This book was better than any of the Harry Potter books. I love this book, and in about an hour's time, I get to read the first chapter of book 2, which I'm really excited about. If you've been following my vlog, you know what I'm referring to. My only 5-star book for this season is Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. Oh my god, I'm just going to hug this book for a moment and try not to get emotional. This book is an amazing book. It is, in my opinion, it is an adult, because it is heavily debated whether it's an adult book or a young adult book, but in my opinion, it's definitely an adult book. It is an adult fantasy, epic fantasy, high fantasy book with hard magic systems. And I love this book. I could gush over it for hours, and I have. In fact, generally speaking, when I do reviews on books, I have 1 review video. For Mistborn, I have 3 because of just how much I love it. So feel free to check out all those reviews where I just gush so much. The first review I did for this book, I did 30 seconds after I finished the book, and I think I started crying, or I was very close to crying. I definitely was crying at different stages throughout this book. It is just so well done. There are twists, there are turns. The magic system that's in this book is so unlike anything I've experienced, and yet it is so amazing. There are limitations on the magic systems within this book, and yet those limitations make it even more amazing. There is a class system, which makes it even more amazing, because there's... I'm sorry, I can't give away the book, but trust me, if you like fantasy, if you like magic, if you like fantasy magic, please do yourself a favor and read this book. If you've never read Brandon Sanderson before, I will give you a heads up. His writing might be a little hard for you to read to begin with, because it is different to anything else that I've experienced. In saying that, once you get used to his writing style, you will fly through this book. I would have flown through this book much quicker than I did. The only reason I didn't was because when I got to the last couple of chapters, as I did with Harry Potter, I don't want to finish the book because then the book is done. So I kind of purposefully slowed down, and then there was this internal tug of war of, no, I don't want to finish it. Oh my god, but I want to keep reading, but I don't want to finish it. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Guys, I am not overstating this. I'm not being paid to say this in any way. I never thought a book would take over Harry Potter for me. But the Mistborn series, at least with book number 1, The Final Empire, absolutely has for me. This is without a doubt, the single best book I have read in my entire life. And I've read many books throughout my life. This one is the best one. None of the others match up to this one. Harry Potter is a close second, but this one jumps above it. Says a lot. And that's why it had to receive 5 stars. I did not find any negatives with this book. The booktuber, I'm just going to check the time we have. The booktuber who recommended this book to me and their subscribers did a review on the book, and I didn't want to see the review till I'd read it myself. And so I read the book, and then I saw her review. And she had 3 cons and 3 pros, kind of like what I do on my channel, 3 cons and 3 pros. But I don't really have any cons for this book at all. And I think even if I did, I would have to search really hard to find them. And I could also let go of all of those cons because of just how amazing the book is. And I don't say that a lot at all. So, now unlike Helen, Keller's teacher, anytime I put this book down, well, let's go back a step. Anytime I knew I needed to put this book down, I struggled to do so because every fiber of my being wanted to keep reading in a situation where it simply wasn't possible for me to keep reading. For example, I had to go to bed because I had work the next day, or I had to go and run an errand because I couldn't later. Say if I had to go to the store, the grocery store or something, and they were going to close, I have to go. I have to put the book down. It was a battle to put it down. But any time I did successfully put it down, from the moment I put it down until the moment I picked it up again, my thoughts, feelings, existence completely revolved around this universe, the world of Mistborn. I not only loved this book, I was obsessed with this book. It, in the most positive way, plagued my existence whenever I wasn't reading it, just, even though it did when I wasn't reading it as well. I dreamed about Mistborn. I thought about Mistborn. I thought about the magic systems, the class systems, the nobles, the peasants who have a different name, but I don't want to give away spoilers, and just everything that was going on, what was happening at that time, what might be coming up in the future. This is just such an amazing book, and I've said this before on my channel many times, and I'm going to say it again because it is the wrap-up for this season. Brandon Sanderson, where have you been all my life? Because seriously, had I known about this book when it first came out, I probably would have read it ages ago. And thank you, Brandon Sanderson, because you've definitely revolutionized reading for me. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate that. So thank you very much. Okay, so there you have it. I am going to leave that there, guys. What a blast it has been. I started this channel in the third week / towards the end of the third week of January, and the weeks that have followed since then have been an absolute journey, thanks to all of the books I've read and just all the experiences I've had. It's just been a really wonderful ride, and I can't wait to keep going. So let's close out the Australian summer by saying that despite the fact that I read 8 books this season, and despite the fact that half of them were either only 1 or 2 stars, it was still a very enjoyable experience, and I loved it so very much. I can't wait to get on to my March books, and in less than an hour, I'm going to be starting Well of Ascension, the second Mistborn book. I'm so excited about that, can you tell? And yeah, I'll let you guys know how that's going when we get to my weekly vlog at the end of this week. If you have any comments, thoughts, and questions, please let me know in the comment space below. Letting you guys go. Peace, blessings, and so much love. Oh, I don't even know how to do that, but anyway, love. And I'll see you in the next one. Mwah. Happy reading from me to you, and let me know what you've been reading this season. Bye, guys. Bye.